Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again, and I guess I'm doing an about face in this video segment. Now, I'm going to be talking about part 2 of how to read a natal chart, and let me start by when you look at your chart. Okay, we have the Sun is right here in Cancer, Moon in Gemini, Taurus ascendant. Those are, in my opinion, the three main proponents or parts of a person's chart, and they strongly affect and impact the person's characteristics and personality. Now, the fact that I have the Sun in Cancer and the Moon in Gemini could indicate a somewhat mercurial changeable combination. You have Gemini is a mutable sign, of course, and you have Cancer, though a cardinal sign, can be a sign that is somewhat can vacillate and change and be moody and can be considered temperamental. But I have the Taurus rising, and I think that stabilizes that mercurial changeable quality. And on the other side of the coin, the Cancer Gemini combo makes me more adaptable and pliable than your typical Taurus rising personality. But conversely, now Taurus rising stabilizes the changeable quality of the Sun and Sun in Cancer and Moon in Gemini. So that's something you look at when you're looking at your chart. That's very important. Another thing is, look at your chart ruler, and that is identified by looking at your rising sign and the planet. You find where the planet that rules it, in this case Venus rules Taurus, find out what house it's in, and that'll be right here. That'll be Venus in Leo in the 4th house. So that is a very important part. It shows that the home figures very prominently in my life, and that my Taurus rising comes out very strongly, most strongly in matters pertaining to the home and family and emotional security. So, and the Venus in Leo, what's important about that as well, what puts further emphasis on it, is that it's a singleton, and meaning that it's the only planet or major influence I have in fire. And Venus in Leo, what's interesting is it's vastly different than the Taurus rising, because Venus in Leo can be has certain extroverted characteristics with it, and can be someone that wants attention, and you have this gregariousness mixed with it, but you have the conservative Taurus rising, so there's a little bit of a conflict there with that square. But anyway, people, the next thing is, look at how the planets are dispersed in your chart. Give it an actual visual look, and in this case, majority of my planets are on the bottom part of the chart in houses 1 through 6, and those are the houses that are not seen when the person is born. So the correlation is with that is connected with introversion, and somebody that is very private in these energies are strongly put into things of a private nature. 8 of the 10 planets are on the bottom half of my chart, and could suggest subjectiveness, introversion, a little bit more pessimism than as opposed to optimism. Now, I have also, you look at this, and 4 of the 10 planets are in extroverted or masculine signs. We count the MC and ascendant. I have 7 planets / major influences in feminine signs, and then I have 5 of them in masculine. So that kind of helps balance out this introversion a little bit, but I believe the chart suggests a lot more introversion as opposed to extroversion. And also look and see how many planets are on the left side of the chart and how many are on the right. Now we have a balance here. I have 5 on the left in houses 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, and there's 5 on the right in houses 4, 5, 6, 7. We count 8 and 9, but there's no planets in there, of course, but it's 5 and 5. So this could show or indicate some kind of vacillation, perhaps with independence, self-reliance, which is this left side of the chart, and the right side is more about dependence and doing things more in group partnership settings and dependence on others. So I kind of, maybe it indicates too that I know when to do things and initiate things myself, but I could also humble myself and maybe ask for help when the time is needed. So that is another thing to look at. And another thing to look at are the quadrants, and a quadrant is a set of 3 houses. First quadrant right here is the first, second, and third house. The second quadrant is the 4th, 5th, and 6th house. Third quadrant, 7th, 8th, and 9th house, and the fourth quadrant is the 10th, 11th, and 12th house. Now, when I look at this, I have 4 planets in the first quadrant, and I have 4 in the second. So these are the quadrants that are most accentuated and emphasized in my natal chart. Now, looking at this, well, the first quadrant is more about self-aggrandizement. It can be somewhat egocentric. The person could very well be very strongly emphasizing their own personal needs, and in this case I would have to say that I do that. But on the other hand, now we have 4 in this quadrant, in the second quadrant, which is more about the home and family is the 4th, children is the 5th, work is the 6th. Now it's more about this particular quadrant emphasizes things connected with more your immediate, I guess you could say, your family relationships with that, as far as, like, say, your home, the family members in your immediate home environment, your 5th, and children, and the work, and this work life as well, which is the 6th. So those things are very strongly pronounced and emphasized, and this quadrant, 3rd and the 4th, obviously is not as emphasized. So that's another thing to look at. And also look at the conjunctions that involve the sun, if you have any with the sun, moon, and ascendant. Now, in my case, I have 2 conjunctions to the sun. I have Mercury conjunct my sun, and that could indicate somebody often could have at least an adequate intelligence, a good mental aptitude. Now, somebody that can be verbose and articulate things well. And Sun conjunct Mars, well, keep in mind this is in more of the docile sign Cancer, but with the conjunction to Mars, I could be a little bit more aggressive, assertive, and outspoken than your typical Cancer personality. So that's something to consider when you look at your sun sign. Now, I don't have any conjunctions to my moon in Gemini, but I have a conjunction to my Taurus rising, which is Saturn. And with Saturn conjunct the ascendant, one's personality can be somewhat inhibited, a little bit restrained, a little bit held back, and it could show somebody that might strongly incline toward introversion. And you have that combined with all those planets below the horizon in that houses 1 through 6. This really can indicate that. It can indicate somebody too that's very dependable and reliable and very consistent with their, as far as just themselves in general, with their outer personality. So they're very, that's something to consider. Look at the any conjunctions to the ascendant, and then look and see if you have any planets in your first house. Now, in my case, I have the moon in Gemini in the first, and having the moon in Gemini in the first house can take on stronger emphasis because that's in the house of the outer personality and the first impression. And along with the Taurus rising, there may be many people that really strongly see my moon in Gemini characteristics. And I've had some people ask me if I was a Gemini from time to time, and maybe it's attributed to that. It's also just probably because my moon is in Gemini regardless of the house it's located in, but I think that has something to do with that. Now, then look at and see if you have, look at your planet distribution by the elements and the quality, and then see how many you have in each element. Now, I have the majority of mine, and I'm also, of course, counting the ascendant and MC in this. Majority of mine are in, if we look, are in the air quality and water. You're going to see I have the MC, moon in Gemini, Uranus and Jupiter in Libra. That's 4 in air, and I also have 4 in water. I have Mercury, Sun, Mars in Cancer, and I have Neptune in Scorpio. And then, so there's obviously a little combination of having an emphasis on air, which is communication, intellectual ability, abstract reasoning, and then you have an emphasis on water as well, so there's also a strong emotional element in my nature. Now, then see how many you have is in the qualities, which are fixed, cardinal, and mutable signs. Well, I have, as far as my fixed, I have 5 in fixed. I have the MC, Saturn, Ascendant, and I have Venus in Leo, Neptune and Scorpio are all in fixed signs. Then, but I also have 5 in cardinal, which would be Mercury, Sun, Mars in cardinal signs, and also Uranus and Jupiter. Well, then you see if the person equates to a final or chart signature, and that would be taking what you have the most of in the elements and qualities. Well, the problem with mine is I don't come to one because there's some ties that are involved, and because I have majority, I have 4 in air and 4 in water, but I also have 5 in fixed and 5 in cardinal, so that's like 4 chart signatures. So that I don't equate to one, but I think it's safe to say I have a very strong Cancer emphasis is dominant in my horoscope, and I think that is one thing that to really look at strongly, because I do have the stellium right here in Cancer. So that is something to consider. And so in other words, just finding your chart signature by taking what you have the most of in your element and quality and then equating it to a particular zodiac sign. Now, another thing to look at the chart pattern in your horoscope, and if you have a chart pattern, in my case, I have a bull chart, and the bull chart, everything is basically on one half of the chart wheel, and the 2 planets to look at that are prominent are look at the ones on the rims. In this case, it's Saturn and Taurus in the 12th, and then I have Neptune and Scorpio in the 7th. And firstly, having a bull chart can indicate somebody that is very strongly engrossed in their own life, in their interests. It can show certain concentration of power as far as their energy goes, and they often tend to block out extraneous influences. And Saturn in the 12th can indicate laborious work in solitude or seclusion, or perhaps even doing something, working things connected with the metaphysical, which in my case is the astrology. And Neptune in the 7th can indicate relationships perhaps with things in the people in the metaphysical. So these things are very strongly connected with this bowl chart, with this whole energy, which is my bowl chart. So that is something to look at when you're looking at your natal chart wheel. In any way, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for how to read your natal chart, part 2. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be talking about how to read your natal chart, part 3. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because a person astrologically is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.